So this is my slightly overdue review of Simone de Beauvoir's The Prime of Life, which is her second memoir. The first was Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter, which I read a month or two ago and filmed a review of. I am about 15 pages away from finishing her third memoir, Force of Circumstance, but I think Prime of Life was my favorite in the series. It deals with the years about 1929 to 1944 with her wartime experience, largely in Paris. Unfortunately, I do not know the translator. I'm a little bit annoyed at myself for not being able to find that. I read a library copy from my university library, and I left that copy on my desk in Ottawa, so I can't flip it open and tell you who translated it, and I can't even find my edition on Goodreads because I don't remember which one I read. So it was translated by someone, and they did a fantastic job. But yeah, I loved this one. I loved it. It was kind of like an intimate look into Simone de Beauvoir's intellectual development, into her writing career, into her struggle to survive and to remain optimistic in France during the German occupation, during the part that led up to it. This memoir and the second volume are very much a struggle. At first, she is very naive, she and Sartre, traveling everywhere. They're half broke, and yet they're working on their writing careers. They want to see Europe. They're very much in their own little bubble. I think at one point Simone speaks about how she realized that she is in fact not in control of her own life, not in control of her destiny, which was very shocking to her as the war comes in and she realizes that there are things out of her control. She is not ultimately in control of the path her own life will take, as she previously supposed herself to be in her younger days. In the years leading up to the war, Simone was, as I said, very naive. She was very much in her own intellectual bubble right up until the time that war broke out in France, when France declared war. She believed that there wouldn't be any serious war, or that the war would be over quite soon. She didn't believe it would have a large impact on her life. She chose to put on blinders and not examine politics around her. She actually seemed to dislike politics very much in her early 20s. And of course, when war broke out, suddenly she was forced to look at politics, look at the world around her, look at the horrors of the Second World War. A lot of this volume was Simone waiting to hear from Sartre, waiting to see Sartre, trying to find Sartre. He was in the French military, of course, and then he became a prisoner of war. He actually falsified his military documents and had himself falsely discharged, so he escaped, so to speak, made his way back to German-occupied Paris, where Simone was, and then Simone struggled to feed both herself and Sartre and the other people in their circle. She has stories of boiling rotting meat to make it palatable and edible, stories of only having a few handfuls of pasta for a meal, stories of restaurants where only one dish was served, some restaurants where there was no food available at all and so they had to shut down. But on top of the basic everyday struggles of finding places to live, struggling with rats and cockroaches and finding food, this is very much a story of Simone's intellectual and professional development. She recounts what she read as the war began, as it progressed. at the beginning she was not working. She felt very much like she was on vacation. There was nowhere to go, nothing to do, and so she would sit and read. She would read books in one sitting. Then, of course, the reality of war came, and Sartre was writing in the prison camp. She tried to do the same in Paris. This volume leaves off at approximately the time that Paris is liberated and they're waiting for the war to end, and then force of circumstance, the next volume in this 3-volume memoir, picks up right where this one left off. And I won't talk too much about what happens in that one because I will likely do a separate review for that one. Then I wanted to share this as well. In Ottawa, in an area called the Glebe, there is a shop called the Papery that a friend directed me to pick up some Christmas cards and a journal for my sister for Christmas, but I saw this for $16 or $17 and couldn't resist because this is very much my aesthetic, and it's very difficult for me to pass up a gorgeous notebook. So I bought it, and I told myself it would be my Simone de Beauvoir journal. So quotes and whatnot. This was a very quotable memoir, I'm going to say. Simone de Beauvoir always seems to be very quotable. I'm always reading and find something I want to write down. I'm going to share a few of my favorites here. She says on page 309, "But occasionally I feel that fear represents the moment of truth, and all else is escapism." On a page that I forgot to write down the number for, "We would not set our own shoulders to the wheel of history, but we wanted to believe it was turning in the right direction." Page 19, "Our way of life was exactly what we wanted. It was as though it had chosen us." Page 404, "Yet I did not regret those days of peace and ignorance. I was too enamored of truth ever to mourn lost illusions." 433, "It was possible to accept death in order that life might keep its meaning." Yeah, I'm sure I could have written down many more quotes from that book if I had chosen to, but when you start to read, you just keep going, and then you're done, and it's time to move on to the next volume. But yeah, I would highly encourage you to check out some Simone de Beauvoir. Start anywhere, pretty much. It's all fantastic, but if you're looking for a volume of her memoirs, I would recommend starting with this Prime of Life because it is by far the best volume of her memoirs, and it's one that I think you can pick up without having read Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter first.